Hey everybody, this is Ewan from the CNA team. Today I wanted to show you guys how to use the StarRod map editor. You see I have it open up here. There's a bunch of different tabs here. I'm just going to be going over maps this time. You'll see I'm using version 0.3.2 and there are newer versions. There's 0.4 out as well, and I believe 0.5 is also coming out. If it's not already out, it's coming out pretty soon. I prefer to use this one for most of my mapping because from my experience it tends to crash less. I also use 0.4 for a few other things that I'll go over probably in a different video, but for this one we're just going to focus on using this because it's probably going to crash less. So let's open it up. And you can open up basically any map from the original game. You'll probably have only the original maps. I have some custom ones that I've made, so I'm going to open up one of those. Okay, so once you've loaded into the map editor, you'll see these 4 viewports here. Only one of them has textures on it. You can change that easily just by pressing T while hovering over any of these viewports. You can do the same for the main one as well if you want to do wireframe. And if you want to move around, all you have to do is just hold shift and use WASD. And if you want to go faster, you can press left click. And to go slower, you can right click as well. Okay, and there are 4 different selection modes. So there's models. You see where I'm hovering here is models, and it has your root folder containing all the models in the map. You have colliders. I'm just pressing F2 to show the colliders. And then there's zones. Zones are for cameras. Essentially, wherever there's a zone underneath you, it will use this camera data. And then there's markers, and markers don't actually exist in the game. They're just kind of reference points for your code when you're programming your maps. Okay, so we're going to go back to models here. We're going to start with modeling. So if you want to move Mario around in the 3D plane, you can just press the middle button on your mouse. And to go into camera mode, you just press P, and now you can walk around. And you can hold shift and move faster as well. Okay, so whenever I make maps, what I tend to do is, so I will model in this viewport, and then I will check how it looks within the game's camera. I think that's more important. It's more important to make sure that it looks good from this camera perspective than it is from the overhead perspective, because you're not going to be seeing it like this in game. You're only going to be seeing it like this. So I go back and forth pretty constantly. And you can even model within this camera as well, depending on the situation, if it's easier to do it this way or it's easier to do it in this mode. Okay, so let's select let's select this table here. So to rotate your selected model, oh, and actually before that, you see all these grid lines here. You can turn it off by pressing G, toggling with G. Basically, the grid lines will just snap your model movements, your translations to the grid lines like this. You see it's snapping to each line. Control Z to bring it back, and then but I will usually turn the grid lines off for doing more smooth translations like this. But sometimes I will actually use the grid lines if I want to have precise movements to a certain place. So yeah, so I'm going to keep it off for now. So to rotate, you just hold the right button on the mouse and you drag this. You can see I'm dragging it in the bottom left plane. You can also see it in the top right. And you can do this from any plane too. So from this plane, on the bottom right, I can rotate it this way. And from this direction, on the top left, you can rotate it this way. And you can't rotate from this viewport, only from these three. And if you want to, so right now it's also kind of snapping the rotations. You want to make sure that's a smoother rotation, you can just press 8 on your keyboard, and it will toggle snap rotation. I can toggle it back, and it's back to snapping. For scale, you just want to hold space on your keyboard like this. It'll make the cursors square, you can see. And then left click, hold, and drag. And again, you can scale on any of these 2D viewports, just like that. Control Z to bring it back. And again, if you want to make the scaling more smooth, all you have to do is press 9 to toggle it, and we'll make it a lot smoother. And if you want to move around in these viewports a little bit easier, what I like to do is I just kind of scroll in the mouse wheel like this, and I can just easily move around to places. Okay, let's move on to actually making new models. So, what you want to do is go into your Model tab, so I'm already in it, you go to Create, you want to do New Primitive. And you see I have the outline of a cube here. And you have a bunch of different options. There's cubes, bevel cubes, cylinders, a bunch of different shapes here. Depending on what you want to make, you might want to choose any of these, but if you just want to make a floor, for example, you just want to go to Planar Grid, and usually what you want to do is you want to, because these are, if you're making maps in Paper Mario, you want to make sure that you aren't using too much geometry where you don't need to, because there is a geometry limit. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but this map is relatively close to it. So I'm going to make a floor. I'm going to reduce the segments of it to 1 by 1, because that's all I really need, unless I want to do like precise vertice painting on certain spots. But I tend to not do that from just the get-go. I have other techniques for that I will describe in a bit more in a different video. So generate the model, and you have it right here, and you'll see it's Z fighting with this floor here. So I'm just going to move it up. Now I got a plain white floor, and now if I want to apply a texture to this, I can just go to the Texture tab in the top right here, and I can select any of these. So I can select this floor, for example. And if I want to pick a texture from an existing model in this room, I can also just left-click, like that, and then apply with right-click. And if I want to fix the UVs, which is basically what this is, the textures, where the vertices and the texture is, you can press U while the model is selected. You go into this section here, and you can, same method that I taught you about with scaling models, you can just hold space and drag these. And you can rotate them as well with right click, just like that. And you can also go to Modify Selected here if you want to completely generate some new UVs. For example, planar, what this will do is generate the UVs to match the basically like a planar shape from the top-down view, so from Y. Just like that, and it even matches the floor, like here, perfectly. So, if I wanted to, let's say, if I wanted to make an extension of this floor here, I just want to scroll in here, move it down, nudge it with the arrow keys until the vertices line up. So you can go into vertice mode here in the top right to pick the vertices as well of the model. So I'll select those two on the right, and I'll select these two on the south side, and I'll move it down here. Okay. Now, a couple things here. The UV paint is not accurate, which I will show you how to fix in a second. But if I want to make the UVs, so you see like the individual planks here don't really line up, you can kind of see at the seam here. If you want to make sure that they all match up perfectly, you just want to select both. Go to Modify Selected, Generate UVs. We'll make some new UVs here, and it does it automatically for you. And that's perfect for anything that's just flat like this. You won't really run into any generation problems. Sometimes you will if the model is more, if the geometry of the model is a little bit more complex. It doesn't always work out perfectly, and you have to manually adjust those UVs yourself to get something you like. So for the UV painting part of this, if I want to make this the same color as the floor here, you want to select your model. You go into the painting tab, top right here, and you'll see everything's just kind of gone to flat, no texture, only colors. You can toggle that too with the rendering here at the bottom of this bottom right section here. You can go from textured to flat shading. So I usually use textured, so I'm just going to switch to textured. And you're going to be painting these vertices. So these corners basically are all vertices. That's what you're painting. You're not painting the actual filled in like triangle between the vertices. You're painting the vertices. So I'm going to color pick this color here by pressing right, and now I can just left click, paint that vertice, and it perfectly matches. For here, you can kind of see it doesn't perfectly match. Let's see if can I fix that just by doing that. Perfect, yeah. So there you go. So I've extended this floor here. And you can create a bunch of different models. So you can see here, I can create a cube, scale it down. Say I wanted to create like a shelf or something from this cube. There's another selection mode here. You can go to triangles. So you can just select these two front-facing triangles, and I'll just delete them. Or what you could also do is you could take these triangles and you can go into, so if you try to move these the vertices of these two faces here, what you'll see happen is, because they're fused together with the rest of the triangles, it will move those triangles as well. And if you don't want that, you want to select the model and you want to go to separate vertices. So it'll separate them all. They're not connected anymore. You can move them freely, independently of one another. And if you want to change that, if you want to actually fuse them together, you can do this with any vertice that is inside of another vertice, like all of these vertices in this cube is. You can go fuse, and now it's all perfectly fused. But we want this unfused, so we're going to separate vertices again. I'm going to take these two triangles here. Just going to move them in like this. Move it down a little bit. Something like that. And I actually want this to be, just for ease, I want to make this a separate model. So I can just select this again, and I can split it, and now it's a different model. So now I can just select it with object mode. I'm going to clone this, and to clone something, you just want to select the model, hold Alt, and then drag with the left click, and it will clone the model, just like that. Okay, so move that in there. I'm going to clone another one. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to move it up. Make sure all the vertices match up here. Clone one more. And if I want to flip something easily, I can just press Shift or hold Shift and press Y, or X if I want to shift it on the X-axis. Same for Z-axis, you can do it on any axis, just hold Shift and press X, Y, or Z. Move this vertex up. And now I've actually created some thickness for the inside of this. And if I want to, I also probably want to make sure that there's some walls within the shelf as well. So I'll just clone that original cube again and adjust these vertices inwards like this. And then I'm going to paint it a bit darker because there's no lighting inside. I will give just a random texture for this as well. And now that I'm done with this here, I'm just going to select all of these by holding Alt, or holding Control, sorry, and selecting them all, and then join models and modify selected here. So now it's one model. And when you join models together, it doesn't forget that they were individual models. It will still record that information. If you go into the bottom right here of the model, go to display list, you'll see it says draw 2, draw 2, draw 2, draw 2. Now if I select on, it's a little buggy, so maybe Clover, if he sees this, might want to fix that in the future, but you have to basically select them all first to be able to just select one. So you can select these original models as they were. Unfortunately, my UI is a little messed up, but there is something here to merge all of these to clean up all the triangles essentially, and what that will do is it will clean them up. And it will no longer have that data, but it does save a little bit of geometry data. It'll make your maps a little bit smaller. It's very slight, but it does. So I'm just going to fix these. I'm not a big fan of these render or these UVs, so I'm going to generate UVs again. And because they're kind of on different planes here, I'm just going to do normal. So it will generate it to whatever direction they're facing. This one's still a little messed up, so I'm just going to select those two triangles and generate new UVs. And there you go. Just like that, I've kind of created a shelf here. And obviously, you can get a little more complex with this. It's up to you. Scale it down a little bit, so it's like a little bit of a cubby. Make a bunch of them. You can do all sorts of things. Very basic stuff. And now let's say I'm satisfied with this model I've created, and I want to use it in a different map. So basically what you want to do is you want to make sure you select all these models here, You can press H to hide the models as well, and to toggle their visibility. Just make sure that you selected them all. You go to Selection, top left here. You can go to Export, and you can just export it as anything you want to call it. So I'll just call it cupboard. So now it's exported, and if I want to load it in again, I can just import and file here, prefab. I can go find cupboard. Here it is. Let's open. Now I've got another one. And you can also Control C to copy them, and Control V to paste. And this also, that's weird. Let me try that again. Okay, it's not it's not deselecting them for some reason. Maybe that's I'm used to that in a different version, but it does copy and paste them. You'll see if I go to a different map. If I go to any map here, excuse these wrong textures here, you'll see it loads it in, Control V, and there it is. And if you're using the same texture archive as that map was, it will just have the textures like this, just fine, but this is a different texture archive. So let's go back to that other map. And you'll see I didn't save. I didn't want to save, but if I wanted to save, you just go, you can save as. If you're using version 4, you have to save as. It's the only way to save. If you don't, you're going to lose all your work, even if you think it's saved. Even if it tells you it's saved, it probably didn't if you didn't use save as. So that's one of the frustrating things about version 4. But in this version, I like it. One of the big reasons I like it is because I can just press Control S. And I've been modeling with StarRod for about something like 3 or 4 years now. So I have Control S kind of built into my hand at this point. I just instinctively Control S everything. It's very important to make sure that you're constantly saving, because StarRod can be unpredictable. This version, I feel, doesn't crash too much, at least not for me. I haven't run into many unpredictable crashes, some predictable ones, but I can avoid those. But still, Control plus S, getting that rhythm of that is very important. Make sure that you don't lose your work and become frustrated and demotivated and rage quit making models in StarRod. Okay, so some other useful hotkeys I'm just going to go over quickly. You can press E to enable all these blue lines. It's really helpful to see models that are otherwise pretty hard to see. So like here I have just a black plane that you can't see from here. It's kind of like it's making sure that you can't see this door from this side. And you can press N to enable normals. What normals are, just the way the model is facing. You want to make sure that your models are all facing the correct way. Otherwise, let's see if these are actually, yeah, so this map in the current state of Wua is actually already fixed, but this is an older version. You see I haven't fixed the normals yet on this. If you put this in game, it will look exactly like this. The map will look like this. You'll be really confused if you don't understand normals, why half the models are all missing. They're not actually missing, they're just facing the wrong way. You'll see if I go behind here, I can see all these missing models because they're facing the other way. There's a bunch of ways to fix this. Well, there's actually just 2 ways. You can do it manually, or you can do it, StarRod can automatically do it now in version 3 and past that, where I can select all the models. I just press drag and select. I'm not sure if I went over this, but whenever I go full screen like this, I'm just pressing F. and I can easily go full screen in any of these. So if I want to easily have all the normals flip to the right direction, I can just do modify selected normals to camera. And so wherever this camera is, wherever you are looking, or not looking, but where the models are relative to you in this viewport, it will switch all these normals to your direction. And that won't always perfectly fix it, because you'll see what's going to happen here is, because it's all flipping to this point here, you'll see triangles here that aren't in the right direction. So you're going to have to manually fix all these outliers here. And you can just select the triangles and press Shift plus N, and that will fix it for you. So make sure all your normals are facing the right way if you want your maps to look good in game. In version 4, and after that, I'm sure, you can also easily go back and forth between geometry flags by just pressing M. And that's actually what I do use. So my workflow is I use version 3 if I'm making a new map, less likely to crash. And then when I want to get it set up for in-game, and I add all the things like camera zones and markers and fix the normals, I'll move it to version 4 so I can easily go back and forth just pressing M and seeing where triangles are not facing the right way and fix those. Let's see if I missed any hotkeys here. These shortcuts. So you can see all the shortcuts in this viewport too, and you can experiment with those if I missed any. I don't think I missed any big ones here. Went over pressing T to go into wireframe mode. You can also disable the transform gizmo, which is those axis arrows, by pressing Y. There's other snap options too. And you can increase grid spacing, decrease grid spacing. There are some other things. Those are the things I went over are what I generally use the most. And there's other ways to also you can translate, rotate, scale by inputting precise numbers if you want to do that too. So if I want to translate it a certain amount, or if I want to rotate it a certain amount, I can do that just like that as well. One last thing I'm going to go over here is drawing triangles. There's 3 different modes. I use 2 primarily. You want to use slash. This is forward slash. The bottom right one, the one question mark one on your keyboard. You hold this, you can start drawing a wall. Just like this. You hold the slash and then you just left click all the points you want. You can go crazy with this, whatever you want, whatever shape you want to make. Just make something completely random and you see it made this random wall here. And you can do flat floors and ceilings too by same thing, the period key, so right next to the slash. And you can do the same thing, but this will create a floor like that. And if you do it from the top left perspective here, you can do a wall. So you can create really precise custom shapes using this. Just feel free to play around with that until you got the hang of it. And I use this for making a bunch of different stuff as well. And then if you want to actually create some thickness for it, you can just select it. I'll select this one here. If I want to create walls for it, I can create from geometry. In the newer versions, I believe it's from triangles. So I can do copy mesh, but I can also do convex hole. And it'll create walls for me. Okay, I think that's as much as I'm going to go over for this episode here. And guys, I've started up a Patreon to go a bit more in depth into techniques I use to make these maps that I do. Essentially, I want to provide model prefab packs as well, custom made by myself, with some sort of theme in mind for each one that you can download easily and add into your maps if you're struggling making certain things that might be useful for you. And go over some more complex methods. But I will be making some more videos as well, some free ones just for going over some basic stuff for Star Rod. So it's totally optional if you want to help support me. Help me get a new PC. You might hear a bit of static in the background of this video. Want to get a new PC that doesn't sound like a popcorn machine in my room, and that can actually stream and record at good FPS, and it helped me actually model more complex things like in Blender and stuff, which I can't really run on this PC, unfortunately. If you do subscribe, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to put a lot of hopefully useful content that'll make modding PM a lot easier. That'll help you out a lot with that. Plus I might show off some more cool content, maybe like this map on there. Just some of the stuff I've made. I've made over around 400 different maps. Lots of stuff. All for WUA, Wish Upon Abyss, the project that I founded and make maps for. But yeah, if you found this video useful and you want to see more content like this in the future, feel free to like and subscribe. And yeah, I appreciate you watching. Good luck, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Bye.